All right. Hello, Alyssa.
Hello, Brian.
All right. So one of the problems, we've got all this stuff going on. We've got the show, we've got the Behind the Table podcast, we've got the Weekend View, but promos for these things, we have to kind of space it out. We got the show's the most important thing. But today we got the best promo in the world.
We sure did.
We got Whoopi Goldberg promoting the podcast. I mean, let's take a listen.
Alyssa is on the podcast today. Alyssa is on the podcast today.
I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, that's right up there with James Earl Jones saying this is CNN.
That was pretty good. I wonder if I can cut it and make it my ringtone.
Oh my God.
Right?
I love it.
Just Whoopi singing my name.
I think so. I'm going to see if AI can do it for all the hosts.
Yes.
That'll be good. All right. Well, let's get into today's show. Bill Gates is here with us for the first time on The View, which is pretty crazy. It's such a, there are guests we have occasionally. We have big stars here. We have politicians here. But this is someone who, in our lifetime, probably one of the more consequential people to American culture and the country. What did you think of what he had to say?
This was honestly easily one of the coolest guests we've ever had. And I was talking to one of our producers who's about my age, changed the course of human history in my generation. That we had computers in our classrooms, that the rise of the internet age happened in my lifetime. Also, that's side note, gonna make me seem so old to my future children that I'm gonna be like, oh no, we didn't have the internet when I was born. They're not gonna be able to wrap their heads around that.
You have no idea. You have no idea. The fact that I didn't have a cell phone, my daughter can't understand it.
How did you find people? How did you reach people?
Yeah.
But really fascinating. The big takeaway, I mean, he's brilliant. This is somebody who I think I kind of forget, because I do think of him as Microsoft, but the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the most incredible charitable organizations in the country,
right.
and all the work that he does for global health was fascinating to hear. But I think the takeaway was he was incredibly diplomatic in every answer. This is somebody who's been in the public eye his whole life, and I think he's very keenly aware of how to answer things to not rock the boat, because I think that he knows how important the work he does is, and he doesn't want to create a political firestorm. He doesn't want to go after the powers that be. And I appreciated his answer to my first question about meeting with Donald Trump, which I think made sense for him to do. And he was very positive about him, and that
right.
it was a good conversation that they had.
And he had gotten FaceTime with him, which is something he said he didn't get as much with Joe Biden in 4 years, which is interesting.
And that's been a critique of the former administration, is they weren't as warm to kind of the tech community. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this, if you're somebody like Bill Gates who wants to have a global impact, you have to work with whoever's in office, whoever the president is, even if you may have massive disagreements on things like vaccines or who should be running HHS or whatever it might be. So I think it was interesting just to hear from him directly. And I could see, we think of Trump, and I haven't seen Donald Trump in person in years. You think of him as kind of the blustering, bloviating person you see on TV, but in a one-on-one or smaller format, he can be charming. It's just a fact. There's a reason that he was such a star and such a fixture of, New York and pop culture for so many years. So I could see them also having a very earnest and sincere conversation. But he said something at the end that was, he essentially alluded to, this is the work we're able to do for now. Because I don't think that he could confidently say there might not be changes to, the work that his foundation does, the work that USAID does. So time will tell.
It's interesting because this goes back to something you've talked about since the first time I've met you, which is, when people would say to you, how could you work in the Trump administration? How could you be a part of that when you didn't agree with so many things that he was doing and saying? It's the importance of being part of the conversation, the importance of being in the room, the importance of having the ear of the people making these decisions. And it is something that it's a very fundamental conversation and disagreement I think we have in culture right now, which is, do you isolate yourself from these people or do you try to engage?
Yeah. Do you operate within the power structure as it exists? Do you try to break it, or do you try to resist and have influence from the outside? And I actually think all paths are legitimate. But I think especially for someone like him who's trying to have tremendous influence around global health, it would be foolish for him to cut off the pipeline in the relationship that he has to the U.S. government's, relief efforts that he's been partnered with for decades.
Yeah.
And to his point, they would actually cost lives. And I feel, homeless in this moment. I don't know. We'll talk about this more. I don't know what the Democrats are planning to do at the moment. I'm stunned by some of the things Trump's doing. There's a handful of things I agree with. But I'm never going to be of the mind that name calling and yelling the loudest about how bad people you oppose are is the way to enact change. That will never change for me. It's never been my lived experience. It's never, I can't think of good examples of when it's worked on a grand scale in human history. So I always feel strongly that if you can find a way to find the narrow areas you agree with somebody and work together for good, that's the path you should follow.
Now, we've also talked
and then call out the things you disagree with as quickly as you want.
Yeah. We've also talked about Elon Musk, who is a different version of one of the richest men on the planet. He is the current richest man in the world, now serving as special government employee under President Trump. And you said his approach to cut down government spending is unlike anything we've seen. You explained how Congress should be the ones outraged here as they fought and appropriated the spending of these government funds. What's the most concerning thing for you about this?
I want, first and foremost, the lack of transparency. I want to know from the White House what exactly they're cutting, what programs, what officials that have been appointed, what will cease to exist, what are we keeping? And we don't have those answers.
Is it possible they don't have those answers? Is that why we don't have it? Because they're just fumbling around?
So, just two quick examples. The White House press secretary, who's a former colleague of mine, Caroline, was asked directly if Elon Musk had the clearance to be doing what he was doing, if he had access to certain things. She didn't have the answer to it. And then today we saw that Treasury Secretary Bissent came out and said, oh, actually, Elon Musk doesn't have access to these Treasury Department basically payment logs. Well, for days, it's been in the public domain that he does. And the fact that it wasn't more rapidly responded to give the public some understanding shows me there is a break between what the agencies in the White House know and what Elon Musk is doing.
If it's true is the other part that we don't know.
That right there. I don't want to be alarmist. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's some of it is predicted, but it's going faster and much more. It appears, I don't have that much insight, flippantly than I expected.
Haphazardly kind of.
Yeah. And I think USAID is the starting point because the average American doesn't necessarily know what it does.
I have to be honest, until it became a relevant point of conversation here, I was not familiar with USAID.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with foreign aid. I just didn't know this mechanism.
And I think that's super common. But allegedly the next thing on the chopping block is the Department of Education. And then you get into Pell Grants, you get into things that will impact most Americans in a department that they have more of a vested interest in. And I think that's when you're going to see more pressure from the public to tell us what it is you're actually doing.
You touched on this a minute ago, but do you feel like Democrats are not fighting back hard enough?
So I want to be delicate because apparently people think I'm too critical of Democrats. I'll say this. I just kind of expected a little bit more. Like, I get that when you lose, you kind of have to get your bearings, get your footing, and decide, like, okay, what's our strategy? Who's our spokesperson? Who's our leader? And they did elect a new DNC chair this weekend. But so far, we've seen, a few press conferences outside of, like, USAID, some speeches in Congress. And the one that really got me, with all due respect to Leader Chuck Schumer, is he tweets basically, this is unprecedented, this is illegal, Congress must act. You are Congress. You are the Democratic minority leader. Like, tell Americans what you are planning to do. And that disconnect exists. And then on a grander level, which I hope we at some point get to on the show, and I think we will, not this specifically, but so the DNC held like a candidate forum. They elected a new chairperson. And if you watched it, which I did, it was the perfect split screen America. The issues that were front and center that Democrats care about the most and think are going to win them the next election are 10,000 miles away from what Republicans think are the biggest issues. And it's my gut that America is somewhere here in the middle. It was night and day. And it did feel like, well, we're seeing some things that people are really scared about in the Trump administration. I mean, it got overturned, but ending birthright citizenship, these deportation roundups where even legal migrants could get caught up in them. It felt like it was all identity politics focused still. And that's not to say Dems need a message on countering the DEI efforts on the right. Yeah. But this was like, how many, at-large members who represent this people group are going to have access to the Democratic convention? I'm like, guys, like you're in the weeds. Like you got to look at the bigger picture.
Now, devil's advocate here, though, but when you look back to 2020, and immediately following the weeks following the election in 2020, things could not have been bleaker for the Republican Party. I mean, this is post Jan 6th.
But the difference is we didn't have a leg to stand on.
Right.
Republicans, we should have gone like Homer Simpson into the bushes after that. We had no right to be like, we're here to fight. No,
Correct.
Our people just fought and stormed the Capitol, and we should take a beat and let the Democrats like deal with the pandemic.
Could you envision that 4 years later you'd have both houses of Congress and the presidency? Not in a million years.
Oh yeah, no, not in a million years.
I'm saying don't count the Dems out yet.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
I think they have time.
They
to
need
get their story together.
someone. It doesn't even need to be one person. They need a dynamic leader or leaders to emerge and to streamline a message. Trump is so effective at telling people what they're afraid of and messaging in a very simple manner and repeating it over and over again. America's being taken advantage of. The cost of everything is going up. America's going down the drain. Our borders are insecure. We're letting dangerous people in. His message is it's a post-it kind of thing. Dems need to find their version of that.
All right, so you're very much a part of this, so it's a little bit of a loaded question, but how do you feel like the media's coverage of Trump is going so far 3 weeks into the presidency?
I think our coverage is excellent. No, I think it's a little too soon to say. What I feel like is, I feel like a lot of folks are treating this moment of 2025 as though it was 2017 when Trump first came into office. And they're still covering the 5-alarm fires, the things like pardoning the January 6th, felons and other criminals. Those are dominating news. But it does feel like the bandwidth is stretched, and this is by design by Trump, that some really important things, like what we opened the show with today, are not getting the coverage that they should. It's often what is maybe grabbiest makes for the best headline, but it doesn't necessarily always have the most impact on the American public.
That's right.
That leads the day. And I do think that folks still have a learning curve. I see this because I know Trump and I was in the first administration, that this is not the last administration. It's just not. I could point to at every agency in the first term, at least one person, if not dozens, who were highly qualified, willing to, if they needed to, push back against Trump. And it's not to say they always did, just that infrastructure existed. That is not this. The Elon of it and him going agency to agency and slashing and cutting and firing people is dramatically different. And then, Sonny alluded to this, but the caliber of some of the people that they're putting in are people that would have been, if not stopped from getting into the first, would have been let go because of the associations. All that to say, I'm going to give him more time. Not to say I think I'm ever going to be like, oh, I'm with him. But it's been 2 weeks. I also think he's going to sour on Elon Musk. And I think if there's a lot of blowback to what he's doing in some of these agencies and what Doge is doing, Trump's going to lay that blame at Elon's feet, and he's going to be back in Silicon Valley at Tesla or in NASA and with SpaceX.
It was interesting to hear President Trump saying, like, well, I have to approve of what Elon's doing. I have to sign it off. I mean, not that he hasn't been so far, but he's definitely kind of making it clear that he's the one making with the power here, not Elon Musk.
Well, I know. I thought that
as he should be, frankly.
No, I thought that was not subtle. That was deliberate. But also, like, Trump wants to be powerful, and ceding any of his power to Elon. And also, you do that by just kind of willy-nilly shutting down government agencies and like funding streams. I think that's he's going to change his mind on it at some point. Interesting.
All right. Well, something not politically related that we've been discussing,
Please.
The Grammys. Did you watch the whole thing?
I watched most of it. I went to bed super early. I was very sick all weekend. I think I told you this, but I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, I did too. I was telling Sonny yesterday, I'm a big award show guy. Even as a kid, I watched all the award shows. And the Grammys, I think because of the performances, are really one of the best shows. And I feel like I've kind of turned a corner, because for a long time I was very aware of every artist and very into it. And then there was a moment where I felt like it had passed me by and I didn't know who anybody was. And I think I'm back now. Maybe it's because I have daughters that are like teenagers or 13-year-old.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Chapel Road. I'm in. Olivia Rodrigo. All right, I got this. So.
No, totally. My husband doesn't always want to watch because he feels like that. He's like, I don't feel like I know who any of these people
MTV
are.
Awards, I'm still done. That's the one.
What the Grammys have done very well the last few years, though, is they bring back like legacy artists that like any generation would appreciate and do like the different pairings. I also think that because we had talked about this on the show, the way that they honored the firefighters was perfect. That was
really good job
perfectly
with it.
executed to remind people who are watching from home on the other side of the country, like, this is still very real to LA. Here's how you can help. You know, they're the heroes, not necessarily the stars, you know, you're seeing on stage. Overall, I thought it was a great show. And there actually wasn't, no one's ever robbed. There was no one that I was like upset with who won or lost.
Well, now Taylor was snubbed.
But you know what? She looked like she was having a blast. She was dancing the whole time. She was like doing this with Cynthia Erivo. Like,
and Tortured Poets, is it the best Taylor ever? I don't know.
We're gonna have that debate.
Oh.
I think it is the most evolved Taylor.
Okay.
And I think it will actually be remembered much better than immediate reviews in the history books.
Okay.
I think it's a brilliant album.
It's not my era, but it's fine.
Yes.
It's you know, I like Midnight's better. I'm just throwing it out there, but okay. All right. So, any other takeaways from the Grammys?
Oh, well, if I may elaborate on this, because it got surprisingly a ton of pickup. The Kanye, Bianca, his wife thing.
Yeah.
I hated this. And I want to be clear, I'm not a prude, like, at all in any format. I actually love and remember iconic moments from, like, when we were younger. Like, I remember when Lil' Kim had, like, a boob out with a pasty.
I was
don't know
at
if I
that
can say it.
MTV
Were
Movie
you?
Awards.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I was like, shocking, but I wasn't, like, offended or uncomfortable or,
Right.
like, this is a real deep track. Rose McGowan wore, like, a totally see-through dress. But there was a certain, like, there was an artistic value and sort of, like, you're trying to make a statement.
Right.
This felt exploitive. And this is not, she herself is not a public figure beyond being a partner of Kanye West. I don't know that I've ever in a public capacity heard her speak or heard her takes. And it felt, I think, honestly, most women looking at it felt deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and,
you felt strongly about bringing it up yesterday. We almost didn't because we didn't know, should we give it attention or anything else?
And
but,
I wrestle with that
yeah.
because he does show up and do these things for attention.
Right.
And there's 1,000 other things to take issue with Kanye, but it made me uncomfortable and I didn't feel good for her. And I just, listen, it is a fact that women get into unhealthy relationships. You can fall into cycles of manipulation. You could fall into thinking something is what you want when it's not. And I just hope, like, she's a beautiful woman. I hope she finds her power. And if that's not truly what she wants, that she finds a way out of it.
All right. I think we can all agree
There's
on
more
that.
to women than our bodies.
Absolutely. Going back to Taylor, first of all, I'm regretting my shade on Tortured Poets.
Get ready for the trolls.
No, we might need to edit. But in the meantime, the Super Bowl's this weekend. I wanted to play a clip of something Sonny said yesterday on the podcast and get your reaction. Let's listen.
The Swifties are going to come after me, but let's just watch football. Let's just not watch Taylor Swift, like cutaways to Taylor Swift.
That's not Taylor's fault that they do that.
Yeah, but let's not.
Yeah.
I'm, as a media person, media people, let's stop doing that.
Yeah, I think
If
they're
they
gonna keep doing
win,
it.
that's fine, and then you can show them together in the red lipstick and the kissing and the Chiefs outfits and all of
What
that.
about when, like, Travis
For right
scores a
now.
touchdown?
No. Sorry, Swifties. Sorry, Alyssa.
All right, now we know this is mostly why you're watching the Super Bowl,
I was
but
going to say, Sonny just woke up and chose violence.
yeah, she really did.
Like,
Not for the first time.
Not for the first time. Well, okay, it's not actually an unpopular take. Michael Strahan said that more delicately, but I mean,
Yes.
he's also a former NFL player, but it was sort of like, I want to watch the game. I love it because it broadens the interest of it. Like, I've never gotten into football. I've enjoyed basketball. I've enjoyed baseball. For some reason, it's just the stop and go of it does not do it for me. But for those of us who are forced to watch it with our husbands, this gives us something to look forward to.
All right.
The fashion, the reactions. And you are right. It's not that, like, Taylor Swift is like, now camera, please come to me.
Yeah.
I think she would probably prefer if they didn't. I think she'd probably only like the kiss at the end if the Chiefs win.
Right.
But the reality is it has generated more interest in the NFL. So yes, but also my husband reminds me, allegedly Travis Kelce was very successful before her.
He's a
I'll
Hall of
believe
Famer.
it.
He's
I'll believe
unbelievable.
it when I see it.
I'm telling you, he's on my fantasy team every year. He's an icon. But now, so you will be watching.
Yes,
Where
we're
are
going
you
to
watching?
to neighbor's house. They're having a handful of people on our street over, and it'll be fun. I have friends in my new neighborhood. It's very
look at
exciting.
you.
Yeah,
Look at you being social.
yeah.
I have so my daughter is performing in a show on Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh no.
There's 2 performances. I think I'm going to miss the second performance. I'm going to be a horrible father.
Because that's like, in some you could do it on your phone and kind of watch the updates, but
I'm
you don't
going
want to
to
watch the Super Bowl.
and I
want to
go with friends and have it, and she'll understand, and I'll see it another 4 times. But and she's going to be great. But I'm going to go to the 2 o'clock, and then I think.
These are the things I need to remind my husband, like, to enjoy the moments we don't have kids, because then, like, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But those are the things you don't even think about when you don't have them.
It's a life change. It's a wonderful life change, but it's a life change. There's no question. All right. Well, I'm pulling for the Chiefs. How about you? I assume so.
I am pulling for
Go Taylor's boyfriend.
The Chiefs and Taylor's boyfriend.
All right. On that note, thank you for joining me here today, Alyssa. Tomorrow I'll be back with Sarah Haynes, and we will see you then.